After his big win, Alex Eala didn't say much about the score. She talked about her family. My mother was a SEA Games swimming medalist. My father has always been my pillar of support. They
There are moments in sport that stop you cold. Not because of a scoreline, not because of a record broken or a trophy lifted, but because the curtain gets pulled back and suddenly you are not watching an athlete anymore. You are watching a human being raw and exposed, carrying something so heavy it barely seems possible they are still standing. This is one of those moments. And if you think you know the full story of Alex Eala and what has been driving her extraordinary 2026 season, I promise you, you do not. Not yet. But by the time we are done here today, everything you thought you understood about this young woman, her ferocity, her relentless hunger, the way she plays like every single point is life or death, is going to make a completely different kind of sense. A heartbreaking, beautiful, devastating kind of sense. We live in a world built for highlights. 30-second clips, slow motion replays, the perfectly timed fist pump frozen in a thumbnail. Social media hands us the glossy surface of professional sport and we scroll through it like it is the whole picture. The pristine tennis whites, the flashing cameras, the stadium lights bouncing off a trophy held high above a champion's head. And Alex has given us all of that. She has delivered performances on the grandest stages in the sport that have left people slack-jawed, that have made an entire nation erupt in disbelieving tears, that have turned casual viewers into devoted, obsessive fans overnight. But behind those burning, locked-in eyes that seem to unsettle every opponent she faces across the net, there is a daughter. A scared, fiercely loving, deeply devoted daughter who is playing the most important tournament of her life. And it has absolutely nothing to do with ranking points. In a moment that sent shockwaves through the global sports world, Alex, visibly overcome, tears running freely, shared something about her family that left fans, fellow players, coaches, and tennis legends completely at a loss for words. She spoke about her mother, a SEA Games swimming medalist, and her father, the man she has always described as her pillar, her foundation, her rock. Mike Eala, the man who made Alex possible, is in the middle of a grueling, devastating battle with cancer. And in a moment so tender it almost does not seem real, he looked at his daughter, this once-in-a-generation talent he helped build from nothing, and told her in a trembling voice that his greatest wish in this world is simply to live long enough to see her reach the very top. Just sit with that for a second. Do not scroll past it. His greatest wish. Not comfort. Not freedom from pain. Not rest. His greatest wish is to watch his daughter climb to the summit of women's tennis. That is not a quote from a movie. That is a real father, fighting a real disease, looking at his real daughter and telling her what keeps him going. That is the kind of love that does not fit inside a television broadcast or a social media caption. That is the kind of love that rewrites the entire story of a career. Alex's reaction was immediate and completely unguarded. This was not the composed, ice-cold competitor who stares down match points without blinking. This was a young woman with every layer of athletic armor stripped away, standing before the world as simply her father's daughter, suddenly feeling with terrifying clarity that every match she plays now carries a weight that no ranking algorithm on earth can measure. She was not crying over a bad loss or a tough draw. She was crying for time. Because time, that thing that feels infinite when you are 20 years old and the entire world is spread out at your feet, suddenly felt crushingly, achingly finite. And the entire tennis world felt it right along with her. The outpouring that followed was immediate and overwhelming. From Manila to Madrid, from Melbourne to Miami, messages of love and solidarity flooded every corner of the internet in a wave that cut clean through the usual noise of sports debate and hot takes. And suddenly, that almost alarming intensity Alex brings to every single match this season, that refusal to let anything go, that burning presence she carries onto every court, makes perfect heartbreaking sense. She is not just chasing a ranking. She is racing against a clock that only she and her family can hear ticking. To truly understand the weight of this story, you have to go back to the very beginning. Because the story of Alex Eala cannot be told without the story of Mike Eala. In the brutally competitive world of professional tennis, a sport where talent alone has never been enough, A player rises only as high as the people holding them up will allow. And for Alex, her parents were never quiet spectators in the box, politely applauding and staying out of the way. They were the foundation, the invisible architecture beneath every single thing she has ever achieved on a tennis court. Think about what it means to be a parent and watch your 13-year-old daughter strike a tennis ball and know, with a certainty that almost frightens you, that you are looking at something the Philippines has never produced before. What do you do with that knowledge? The easy path, the safe and comfortable path, is to celebrate her locally, keep the family together, manage the sacrifices to something reasonable. Mike Eala did not choose comfortable. He chose extraordinary. He made the decision to send his teenage daughter halfway around the world to the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, one of the most demanding and elite tennis academies on the planet. He looked at his 13-year-old child and trusted that the crucible of that environment would forge her into something historic. And the sacrifices behind that decision were enormous in ways that never make the highlights packages. Mike was not simply signing a check and waving goodbye at the airport. He was navigating the often maddening politics of local sports federations. He was fighting battles behind closed doors so Alex never had to fight them herself. He was managing logistics, contracts, early sponsorships, international travel schedules, and the thousand invisible pressures that come with launching a child's career on a world stage. He built a bubble of focus around her, shielding her from the noise with a ferocity that only a parent can summon, so she could do the one thing that mattered: develop, grow, improve, become. And he did all of that while maintaining what sports psychologists would call a near-perfect boundary. Mike Eala was never the overbearing tennis parent whose shadow darkens so many cautionary tales about burned-out prodigies. He let the coaches coach. He let the trainers train. He let the academy shape her game. His role was singular and irreplaceable. He was simply the unwavering, unconditional constant in an environment that is anything but unconditional. He was there cheering at junior Grand Slams. He was there for the late-night calls when Spain felt impossibly far from home. He was there weeping when she won the Junior French Open in 2022, becoming only the second Filipino in history to win a Grand Slam junior title. Those were tears of pure, unbridled joy. The same eyes that cried then are crying now for very different reasons. And the weight of that contrast is almost too much to hold. Now let us talk about what Alex has been doing on court in recent months, because the tennis world owes it to itself to properly acknowledge the scale of what this woman has been accomplishing while quietly carrying this impossible emotional weight. Because she has not been crumbling under the pressure. She has been absolutely exploding. Late last year, at the US Open in New York, with the iconic Sampaguita flower pinned in her hair as a symbol of national pride, Alex walked onto the main draw of a Grand Slam and made history that will echo through Philippine sports for generations. She became the first Filipina in the Open era to win a Grand Slam main draw match, defeating her opponent after digging herself out of a deep deficit with a level of mental fortitude that had seasoned commentators shaking their heads in pure disbelief. The Philippines erupted. Social media in Manila went into full meltdown. And somewhere, watching his daughter make history on the biggest stage in tennis, Mike Eala was watching too. She carried that momentum right into the 2026 season with an intensity that told anyone paying close attention that something had fundamentally shifted. At Indian Wells, she arrived radiating a different energy. More assured, more dangerous, more ferociously focused. She carved her way through the draw and reached the fourth round, where she drew Coco Gauff, the reigning US Open champion and the most prized star in American tennis. What unfolded was a statement. Alex was leading 6-2, 2-0, completely dismantling Gauff's game with tactical intelligence and physical aggression that had the crowd buzzing, before Gauff was unfortunately forced to retire with a left arm injury. The retirement meant Alex did not get the full satisfaction of a completed victory. But the scoreline told the real story. She was not just competing with the world's elite. She was beating them. Then came Miami, the tournament where, the year before, she had announced her arrival at the top tier of women's tennis with a semi-final run that reverberated around the globe. The expectations in 2026 were enormous and the pressure immense. She delivered. She took down the experienced and dangerous Laura Siegemund in a brutal 3-set battle that showcased every dimension of her evolving game. Her aggressive baseline play, her improved net presence, and above all else that unbreakable fighting spirit when a match teeters on a knife's edge. Then she came back and beat Magdalena Freck to advance to the round of 16. And in those on-court interviews during her Miami run, the casual, celebratory chats with the microphone that fans love, Alex kept circling back to one specific word: brave. She talked about the privilege of competing on big stages and about her deliberate, conscious choice to be brave out there. At the time, everyone in the crowd smiled and nodded, thinking she meant brave in the sporting sense. Brave enough to go for the big shots. Brave enough to face top 10 players without flinching. But now, in the searing light of what we know about her father's battle, that word shines with a completely different, devastating, and beautiful meaning. She was not just being brave for the fans chanting her name in the stands. She was being brave for the man watching from a hospital room whose greatest wish is to see her reach the top. Every forehand winner was a promise. Every hold of serve was a prayer. Every match she won was her reaching a hand across the distance and saying, "I am still here. I am still fighting. I am doing this for you." The fairy tale run eventually hit the wall that tournament reality always builds in the end. In the round of 16, Alex came up against world number 14 Karolina Muchova, the elegant, devastating Czech player who, when operating at her peak, is capable of dismantling virtually anyone on tour. And on that day, Muchova was operating at her very best. The result was one-sided in a way the scoreline makes painfully clear. A crushing 6-love, 6-2 defeat in just 60 minutes. The grandstand court, which had buzzed and roared for Alex in earlier rounds, went quiet in that particular way crowds go quiet when they are watching something difficult to see. The defeat means Alex will shed significant ranking points and drop to somewhere around world number 45, losing the points attached to her historic 2025 Miami semifinal. Social media would eventually cook up the usual noise about whether her previous run was a fluke, whether she is truly built for the very top. The pressure from back home in the Philippines, where the weight of a nation's tennis dreams rests entirely on her shoulders, would feel suffocating. But none of that analytical chatter matters right now. None of it. Because when Alex walked off that court and shook hands and stepped away from the cameras, her mind did not go to ranking projections or clay court preparation schedules. It went somewhere far more important. And in that context, a tennis match is just a tennis match. A scoreline is just numbers. What is real and what actually matters is waiting for her somewhere beyond the white lines. This is the dimension of professional sport that broadcast packages and highlight reels will never show us. These athletes are extraordinary physical specimens wielding rackets under stadium lights, but they are still just people. Sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, friends and lovers. They fight through jet lag, loneliness, physical pain, heartbreak, and grief while living out of suitcases and performing at the highest level for millions of strangers who adore them without really knowing them. The mental load of that life alone would break most of us. And yet here is Alex Eala, carrying news that would ground most people entirely and still walking out onto center courts to take on the best players in the world. Still swinging with everything she has. Still wearing that sampaguita flower in her hair like a declaration of something that runs far deeper than sport. For the Philippine tennis community, this revelation has added an almost unbearable tenderness to what was already an intensely emotional journey of national sporting pride. Alex did not arrive as a finished product ready for the WTA Tour. She was built, year by painstaking year, tournament by tournament, setback by setback, by a family that sacrificed enormously and an ecosystem of coaches, supporters, and believers who saw something extraordinary and refused to look away. Mike Eala is as much a part of every single milestone in this story as Alex herself is. And the news of his illness has reminded the entire tennis world that the stories living behind the players are always bigger, richer, more complicated, and more moving than any statistic could ever capture. The tennis world has responded with a warmth that cuts right through the competitive noise of the tour. Messages of support have poured in from across the globe, from fellow players, coaches, and commentators who understand better than most what the demands of this life truly look like. Because inside the locker rooms and on the practice courts, athletes know that behind every player giving everything they have out there, there is a whole universe of love and sacrifice that made them possible. And right now, that entire universe is rallying around one family. Looking ahead at the rest of 2026, it is impossible to view Alex's schedule through a purely tactical lens anymore. The clay court swing through Europe, Rome, Madrid, and then Roland Garros, the Grand Slam held on Parisian red clay that already holds a special place in Philippine tennis history as the site of her junior triumph in 2022, will all be infused with an emotional charge that goes far beyond strategy and mathematics. Every tournament she plays from this point forward is a chapter in a love story. Every victory is a gift offered to a father fighting the hardest battle of his life. Every time she walks onto clay with that flower in her hair, she will not just be carrying the flag of the Philippines. She will be carrying her father's greatest wish on her back and channeling it directly into her racket arm. The remarkable thing about Alex, the thing that sets her apart from so many gifted young talents who shine briefly and then fade, is what she does with pressure. Most players are diminished by it. She is amplified by it. The bigger the stage, the brighter she burns. The heavier the moment, the more dangerous she becomes. We saw it at the US Open. We saw it at Indian Wells. We saw it in the grinding battles of Miami. This is a young woman who does not merely tolerate adversity. She converts it into fuel. And if the news about her father's health does anything to her game in the coming months, history suggests it will not weaken her. If everything we have watched her do tells us anything at all, it is going to make her absolutely unstoppable. The 2026 season has so much road left to run. Rome, Madrid, and then the red grandeur of Roland Garros are all on the horizon. And somewhere watching, whether from a screen in a hospital room or with everything crossed from the stands in Paris, Alex Eala will be there. His greatest wish burning like a lantern in the dark, lighting the path his daughter is sprinting down with everything she has. He gave her the world, and now she is going to try to give it back to him. One match at a time, one tournament at a time, one historic milestone at a time. For the Philippines, for the sport, and most of all, for her dad. And Alex, the whole world is in your corner. Every single step of the way.
When Alex Eala didn't say much about the score. She talked about her family. My mother was a SEA Games swimming medalist. My father has always been my pillar of support. They sacrificed.
Naman yun, nakita niyo po si Alex, big yun ang flag ng Pilipinas sa paraan.
Sobra. I mean, sobrang happy. It's been a, dream since she was a kid to see her.